Hello everyone. I would like to say welcome to Model 7 and congratulations to everyone who have gone through, the previous models. I hope you've been able to, learn a thing or two or even more, hopefully. And I hope that you're already applying some of the things that you've learned so far. So today we are going to be talking about storytelling and content structure. Now, if you're familiar with Model 4, had shared a bit about how to create, a storyboard and how important it was for video content creation. Now, I want you to consider this a slightly advanced version or another approach to ensuring that you are getting, results when it comes to your content creation journey. Now, I want you to pay keen attention. I want you to be able to have your paper and biro with you. But beyond just writing, I also want you to think with me as well. I want you to be able to play scenarios in your head, right? As one of the things that I consider a very powerful tool when it comes to learning would be your imagination. So I want you to imagine yourself doing some of these things that I'm sharing. Imagine yourself applying them already, you know, just so that it gives you an experience. Just so that you have an experience while listening to me and you're not necessarily trying to just meet up with, finishing all your modules. Remember that um the what makes an event what makes an event impactful is what you do after the event. So my intention is, as we continue on this journey, is that for every model you've watched, what is most important is how you are able to practice immediately and how you are able to put some of these things that I've shared and that I will share more, or that put some of these things that I've shared or will continue to share into immediate practice so that it can, you know, um, so that it can translate to more value for you. All right. So again, welcome to Model 7. This is storytelling and content structure. If you've watched Model 4, you're going to also enjoy this as well. So the first question is, what is storytelling? Now, storytelling is the art of using structured experiences or details to make a message memorable, relatable, and impactful. Please, I would need you to pay attention to those three words: memorable, relatable, and impactful. What makes a good story is that you're able to remember it, is that you can, you know, relate to it, and it feels impactful at the end of the day. Now, growing up, some of us may have had this experience and some of us may have not. But if you grow up in a typical, as a millennial, in a typical setting during the evenings, you and your family, you are outside receiving cool breeze. One of the things that we grew up with was hearing older folks share stories under the moonlight, right? Now, what made that experience memorable for us is how interesting those stories were and how that those stories, whether they were sharing, stories of, when they were growing up, or stories of civil wars, you know, or just stories of, you know, what happened during specific times in history, right? What made those experiences memorable for us was, you know, the experiences that surrounded that, and that is the power of storytelling. Storytelling has a way of, you know, shooting us into a world of imagination and keeping us engaged, such that when we hear older folks tell stories back then, it almost felt as if, we were reliving it with them. And that is the power of storytelling. Now, if you don't have this experience, I would like to say hello, Gen Z. But even if you don't have this experience, then you can still relate because everyone have been in conversations, everyone has been in a scenario where, you know, a story was told, right? So, for instance, your friend is coming to give you a gist, for lack of a better word, right? Giving you a gist about what happened at a certain time at a certain place. What make that moment special is how probably relatable and the experience that surrounded, the information or the story that is being told in that moment. And so it is important that when it comes to storytelling in our content creation journey, or in when it comes to creating content, or in our content structure, it is so important that we bear in mind that a good storytelling is one that is memorable, relatable, and impactful. So, what makes a good story? I'll tell you straight up: structure, intention, emotional connection, and strategic delivery. Right? So, now we're not just telling stories, we are also being very intentional about creating emotional connection and putting structure, to ensure that what's it called? To ensure that our story leaves a memorable, um, and relatable and impactful effect, right? So we're talking about structure, we're talking about how you put words together, right? And I'm sure some of you can still remember what I shared in module 4 when it comes to storyboard, right? How you're putting your words together, right? When we talk about intention, we're talking about the aim. Why are you what is the aim? What is the goal of taking us through the journey that you are taking us through your storytelling, right? Then we'll talk about emotional connection. It's so important that people feel connected to the stories that you are telling. And then strategic delivery, how you deliver your story is as important as the story itself. So these are like what makes up a good story. So, as we go on, I'm going to share a four-part framework that will help you, further create structure when it comes to storytelling, um, and content structure generally. So, the next point is why storytelling matters in content creation. Now, storytelling matters in content creation, as you know, because humans love stories. Human love stories. Everybody loves a good story. Everybody loves a good story. Everybody enjoys a good storytelling, right? And so, if you're serious about taking content creation seriously, then you need to learn how to infuse good stories to ensure again that you make a memorable, relatable, and impactful effect on your audience. Now, stories make people remember you, stories build trust, stories create emotional connection, stories increase watch time, and stories convert viewers to followers or clients, right? Now, when you become good with storytelling, what happens is that people start to associate you, especially when you have like a unique approach to your storytelling, right? Probably you have your own unique approach, a way you tell your stories on a way you tell your story on social media, right? A way um you have conversations generally. What happens is that people begin to associate you with your style of storytelling, right? And that makes people remember you even more. And then stories build trust, right? Stories create emotional connection. Like I said, people need to be able to see themselves in your content, right? Especially when you're creating content as a personal brand, even when you're creating content just to sell a product, right? It's so important that people have that emotional connection to what you are selling beyond the product that is right in front of them, right? So storytelling keep people engaged, to the point that they don't even know that they have been sold to. And that is why that is the beauty about storytelling. You can be so one can be so engrossed in your storytelling, and by the time they realize that they've been sold to, they have already, given you all of their attention. And that is what storytelling is supposed to do, is to keep you, is to keep your audience focused on you, increase watch time, is to get your audience to pay attention to what you are saying long enough, you know, for you to be able to either make a request or get them to do something, right? So that is the whole idea of why storytelling matters in content creation. Again, if you watched Model 4, I really talked about the, why it matters. And so today, again, it's just a gentle reminder of that fact. So when it comes to proper storytelling, we need to consider, we need to pay attention to our hooks and opening lines. Again, I had shared this before, to our hooks and opening lines. This is so important when it comes to, content creation, right? How you start, how you share, you know, the story that you have is so important. It's so important. How you start it and how you take people through that journey is important, and that is what we call hooks and opening lines. So hooks are basically your opening lines, and your hook determines whether people scroll or stay. Now, there's something when it comes to the social media space, or when it comes to the internet generally, you need to understand that people have low attention span, and so and the more we go on, the more we even realize that the attention span is declining more and more. And so before now, people will say that, oh, you have 10 seconds to capture people's attention. But now what we're saying right now is that you don't even have as much as 10 seconds. And so how do you ensure that people hear you out before they even, before they lose interest? Your hooks and opening lines play a very, very vital role when it comes to storytelling. So there are different types of hooks, right? And this is something that we didn't share in the model 4, so I'm excited to share. There are different types of hooks. We have the bold statement hook, we have the relatable hook, we have the problem hook, we have the curiosity hook, and we have the contrarian hook, right? So these are all 5 kind of hooks that you can use when it comes to starting out, with your with when it comes to starting out generally, with your content, right? So we have the bold statement hook, for instance, has to do with making a bold statement, right? Like putting out statements that are contrary to popular opinions, right? Or it's more about, I like to call this hook, this kind of hooks, kind of like shows your authority, shows you as an authority in your niche, right? So regardless of whatever niche that you are in, or whatever industry you are in, making use of bold statement hooks a lot shows that, oh, this person understand or knows what they are doing, and they are not afraid to be able to share their thoughts, right? They're not afraid to share their thoughts. This might sound like the contrarian rule, but the contrarian hook rather, but it is slightly different, and I'll come to the contrarian hook very soon. But for the bold statement hook, you are simply putting you're being bold with your statement, right? You are making a statement. So, for instance, you have an example would be, you are posting content the wrong way. So you see how it shows authority, right? So both statement hooks a lot of times has to do with um, teaching moments, right? So the idea is to get people's attention so that you can be able to show them something, right, that they can do better, or to be able to bring their attention to something that they've probably been doing wrong. And that is what a bold statement hook is all about. So when you start out with that flow, you then build up from there. That way, you are keeping your content, that way you are keeping your content structured. That way you are able to pull them in. Remember, that is what hooks and opening lines are all about, to pull people in. Then we have the word relatable hook. So for the relatable hook, we are talking about, statement, or starting a conversation that puts the audience into consideration. So what that means is that you are starting out your conversation or your content with something that your audience can relate with, right? So you're saying things that your audience can very much relate with. And the reason why relatable hooks works a lot is because, like I said, people like to see themselves in your story. People want to be able to create a connection between what you are saying and themselves, right? So if you are able to master the use of relatable hooks, you are going to be, you're literally going to become a people person in your industry on the content creation niche, because you've learned how to be able to share your thought process by considering your audience and by putting your audience into the story. So a classic example would be if you've ever struggled to stay consistent. Now that is something that maybe you want to talk about consistency, right? Instead of starting out and saying, hello, today I want to talk about consistency. Consistency is the heart of. Nobody wants boring definitions. Nobody wants to pay attention to content that is full of jargons and full of, heavy lifting words. People want to be able to hear you and feel like that's a human being is talking to them. So instead of starting out that way, you can simply talk about consistency from the angle of relatability and say, oh, if you've ever struggled to stay consistent, I understand how you feel. Here's how I've been able to deal with inconsistency in my line of work. Now, if you watch towards the end, I have a special gift for you. You see me, right? This is something I just thought right on the spot. This is me trying to say that, first of all, I identify with the fact that there are people out there who struggle with staying consistent. Then also, I'm also empathizing with the fact that, oh, I see you, right? You're empathizing with them, you're validating their emotion. And then right after you validate the emotion, you cannot share your solution. By using relatable hooks, you show that you are human and that you value, your audience a whole lot, and that you are probably people centric. So someone who has mastered the use of relatable hook, and that is something that they use often and often, or you just notice that they've mastered it, what happens is that they become people centric. All right. So the next kind of hook is problem hook. So this is what this kind of hook talks about, spotlighting problems in your niche or industry, right? So this is about making statements that has to do with identifying a common problem that people don't talk about a lot, right? And it is also something that people can relate with as well. So an example would be, nobody tells you this about going on Instagram, right? So it is more about, getting people's attention to actually see that, to actually see a problem that people are ignoring. So you can use this in your business, you can use this in whatever industry you are in. You are simply trying to get a hold of people to pay attention to your problem, always remember that your story has to have an end goal in mind, right? So you're not going to be using the problem hook and leaving them like that. You have to ensure that you're providing solution. Then the next that we have is curiosity hook. So this is when it comes to curiosity hook, well, it's more about you are trying to get your audience to be, to get curious exactly what the word is, right? It's more like you're trying to spill some secrets that they probably would be interested in wanting to know, right? And we are in the social media age. Trust me, gossip sells a lot. This is why, gossip blogs like Instablog or all your favorite blogs are selling out big time. Why? Because it feeds people's curiosity. So as humans, we are more or less, or we're always curious, right? So how you want to use the curiosity hook in your content is maybe use something like this changed my content forever, right? Or how I was able to lose X and X amount of weight. Or you can start with something that has to do with your own personal life, you know. Again, how much vulnerable you choose to be when creating content online is really up it's really up to you. You decide that. So you can always put out hooks that fit people's curiosity in such a way that they're going to stop and like, okay, I want to really hear this, you know. And people do it all the time on the internet. You see it on TikTok. You will even see how someone would put how I caught my husband cheating. That is a curiosity hook, right? You see the write up on the video, and now you're interested because people like to be interested in a lot of stuff. Like I said, it's like gossip. It's like inviting people to come and you know get a scoop, get scoop on certain things, either about your personal life or on any matter, basically, right? So that is what the curiosity hook is, and it is very helpful when it comes to storytelling, right? And general content structure, or how, and it's very, very, very important when it comes to creating your content structure. Then we also have the contrarian hook, right? This is saying something that is outrageous. So this is more like a controversial hook, right? People who use the contrarian hook a lot, they're usually very controversial. Oh, so let me give you an instance of controversial hook. Um, I mean, I'm thinking of the worst things to say, right? Mm. I'm just thinking of the worst things to say. So an example that I put here was stop trying to go viral. That's contrarian because every other person would want to teach you how to go viral on social media, right? Now, the fact that it's contrarian doesn't necessarily mean that the person in question is against that line of thought. It just means that they're trying to, get your attention, right? We can think of other contrarian hooks. We can say um, we can say things like, you know, um, do not burn fat because fat is healthy, right? Now that doesn't make sense, right? But if I'm going to use that hook, for instance, I'm probably going to use it strategically to say why you need to burn fat. But I need to have that opening line to get your attention, and that is what the contrarian hook is all about. Now, let's dive into structuring short form content. Earlier, I had spoke about that I'll be sharing a four-part framework on how to structure your content, on how to ensure that you're infusing this when it comes to your storytelling, right? So, your storytelling is directly linked to your content flow, right? So everything that comes with structuring your content will largely depend on how you are sharing your story, right? Or how you, or would that directly, you know, would directly influence how you're having conversation with your audience. So I'm trying to ensure that you understand the linking, right? What links storytelling and content structure. Remember that what already stated earlier that it is an art using structured experiences or details to make a message memorable, relatable, and impactful. So when it comes to now structuring short form content and understanding what storytelling is, then you also need to put in mind this four-part framework that will help your storytelling and content more impactful, memorable, and relatable. All right, so let's dive right in. So when we talk about the four-part framework, we're referring to four important details that needs to be in your content flow and that you need to consider when you are, you know, making use of storytelling in your content, right? So the first one is the hook, we have the context, we have the value, and we have the call to action, right? We already shared what a hook is. And so what I simply typically did here was that I decided to have a short script and I want to identify the hook, the context, the value, and the call to action as well. So let's go with the hook. You don't need 10,000 followers to start making money from your content. Now, I would like to ask, what kind of hook is this? Is it, um, is it the, is it the bold statement hook? Is it the relatable hook? Is it the problem hook? Is it the curiosity hook? Or is it the contrarian hook? I would really, really like to know, right? I would really like to know what you kind of hook you think this is. Anyway, so that is an hook, for instance, right? So you don't need 10,000 followers to start making money from your content. Now, after I say that, the next thing I want to do is put context to that statement, to that bold statement that I just made. And that is the context will now look like. When I first started creating content, I thought I needed a huge audience before I could monetize. I kept waiting to grow. I kept postponing action, but I was wrong. So you see that in your storytelling, you have been able to, share a bit of yourself, right? And your experience. Remember, I said that storytelling has to do is a structured form of that is linked with experience as well, right? So I've been able to share a bit of my experience. I've been able to, um, I've been able to get my audience to see a part of me, right? So I didn't just say you don't need 10,000 followers and I left them like that. I went ahead to share something that, that they could see about me that would want to be like, okay, now I'm curious, right? And they want to hear more. Okay, and not to also forget that when I say something about, when I say not to forget that the context that I just used is something that a lot of people would most likely be able to relate to it, right? So when I first started creating content, I thought I needed a huge audience. Everybody thinks that. A lot of people think that they need a huge audience before they are able to monetize. So again, let's start again from the hook. You don't need 10,000 followers to start making money from your content. When I first started creating content, I thought I needed a huge audience before I could monetize. I kept waiting to go. I kept postponing action, but I was wrong. Now let's move over to the value. Now that you have shared the hook, the context, the value is next. You don't want to delay any further because now you still have their attention. So I would go further to say, first, when it comes to, I would go further to share something like this under the value, right? The value part of the framework, which is first, you need clarity, not crowd size. If 100 people clearly understand what you offer, you can sell. Second, you need positioning. People don't pay for followers, they pay for solutions. Third, you need a clear offer, a service, a digital product, a skill, something people can actually buy. Monetization is about value, not vanity metrics. Do you see this, right? So I've been able to lead them from the hook, put context more to why I said what I said, and now I'm not sharing what worked for me. Now the next thing I would want to follow after, the hook, the context, the value is a call to action. So this four-part framework works all the time. If you can keep your talking head video or your storytelling following this framework, trust me, it would always win all the time because you would get the attention right from the hook. You put context immediately so you don't waste their time. You share value to show your expertise and to, now let them see that you have more value to offer. And then the next thing you want to do is call to action. So a typical call to action to what I'm already saying would be, if you are serious about building a brand that actually pays you, follow for more practical content tips, right? So there's no way someone will hear you say what you said from the beginning, the context you put in and the value that you shared, that they will not want to follow through with your call to action. The four-part framework is all about ensuring that there is a steady flow in your content creation and that there is a steady flow to your storytelling and that you are not just saying words all over the place and being all over the place. I had shared this in the module 4, a lot about how it's important that you need to be able to put structure to your content, right? But even now, I'm sharing a four-part framework that can help you do that easily. This is another way to help you do that easily, right? You can just have a system that works rather than trying to, you know, create content in such a way where you are probably disorganized. So always know that you don't have all the time in the world. So make use of a good hook, put a good context to it. Don't forget to put value and then your call to action. Now, if you are a content creator and you're just all about sharing stories or just talking to your audience, you're probably not selling anything, then your context will always be longer, right? That means that means you're just, because you see most of that on TikTok where people are just sharing random stories and not really asking you to buy anything. But either way, don't forget that people like that, even if they're not selling anything, they are probably selling themselves. So what that means is that what they are doing would probably be contributing to why they have a lot of followers, because they're just there telling stories. They're just there doing, come with me as I go to the supermarket, right? So even if they don't have like a call to action that says, or even if they don't have a value that says, that gives them 10 steps on how to do something, those people are still, you know, making use of, a part of this framework, which is that they end up sharing, you know, details that keep people glued, right? So the hook for them might be, get ready with me as that is a hook, right? And then context. So they can put in, other reasons why, they are probably heading out to a show, heading out to a party, the whole idea again, like I would say, is to keep people hooked. And so whether you're a content creator or you're a business owner or you're creating content for brands, just have it in the back of your mind that you always need to pull people in. You always need to add context to to the entire flow. You always need to ensure that you are giving them value. So, like I said, value doesn't have to be you're listing out things, but people are able to see the value of what they are watching. And then a call to action is simply the action that you want your audience to take after they've watched your video. So it could be, oh, follow me for more get ready with me videos, or follow me if you want to hear more about this, right? So that is typically what, the four-part framework will be doing for you. Alright, so let's talk about keeping viewers engaged. right? So in keeping viewers engaged, you need to be able to remove fluff, get to the point quickly, right? When it comes to storytelling, when it comes to, you know, talking head videos and content creation for brands or for yourself, remove fluff, get to the point quickly, cut unnecessary introductions and filler words. Every sentence must have a purpose. You have to be that intentional, right? Putting your mind the four-part framework, right? Avoid repetition. Do not repeat the same thing over and over and over again. People get tired, right? Simplify your language. Remember, when it comes to content creation, right? It's important that you don't, I mean, that is why I always say that people should consider themselves when it comes to learning, right? So some of these things that I'm saying, it's not a, you know, what set in stone on how you must go about your content. It's about things you need to consider when starting out, most especially, or things you need to consider generally when it comes to, you know, putting out yourself out there, putting out content, right? You need to know these things because truly, the space is becoming saturated. Everybody's becoming a content creator. Everybody, in fact, you're now even competing with your mothers because there are people who typically, right, there are older people who are on TikTok right now putting out stuff and all of that. So I just wanted to share that. So simplify your language, especially if you're doing content creation professionally. Simplify your language. Use clear conversational words. If a sentence sounds complex, rewrite it. Simple language increases understanding and retention. Okay, focus on one core message. One video should communicate one main idea. Too many points create confusion and reduce watch time. Right? If your video content is not streamlined or is not focused, what happens is that people might just lose interest. So always ensure that your videos are focused on a theme or one core message. Then something to always also consider when it comes to keeping viewers engaged. Cut long setups, right? Give only the context needed to understand the message. Over explaining reduces momentum. Don't overflog your point, right? Use clear verbal transitions. Guide the viewer with phrases like "here is the real issue" or "this is where most people get it wrong." Verbal clarity keeps attention moving. And another thing again is some people, because this can also be a limiting factor, some people might feel like, oh, they are not so good with speaking English, and so that might discourage them when it comes to speaking or doing talking head videos. Yeah, I personally would say do not let that be an hindrance. You can even speak in your mother tongue, like when you can. I know people on the internet who use um broken English to share value and they're doing it so well, right? So when we talk about verbal transitions, I don't want it to look like, oh, we're just talking about people who are professional. No, just ensure that your your conversation keeps attention moving, right? Um, respect attention, deliver what your hook promised, right? Deliver what your hook promised. Value builds trust and trust builds retention. That is something that you need to know, that when people on social media are giving you their time for them to listen to you, or when people are scrolling and they pause, you want to make it worth their time, right? So yeah, cut long setups, use clear verbal transitions, simplify your language, focus on the core message, avoid repetition. I think I did a bit of double mention on this slide, pardon, but the last one will be respect attention, deliver what your hook promise. So one of the things that people do is that they'll put out a hook. Oh, here's how to earn 2 million in 2 days, right? Um, I mean, that can also be a form of attention hook, but what, what we mean by, deliver what your hook promised is to say that if your hook promises that, oh, so people say, watch this video to the end, I have a gift for you. Ensure that you actually do, right? Because when you build your brand or when you build your content on on fictitious hook, on hooks that do not properly um, that are not real, right? What happens is that people begin to lose trust in your brand. So you want to ensure that your hooks, even though that your hooks are created to get attention, but it has to be sincere at the end of the day. So far we've been able to talk about, what storytelling is, right? From the angle of, ensuring that you put in mind what a good storytelling is supposed to have. It's supposed to be memorable, relatable, and impactful. So we're able to talk on storytelling from this angle. We're able to talk about why storytelling matters in content creation, because you cannot overemphasize on this point enough. We talked about hooks and the different types of hooks that exist, and you can use any of these hooks to, start out your content or even build a reputation around. And then we talked about structured short form content, the 4-part framework that will always work anytime, any day. And then how do you keep viewers engaged, right? And and ensure that, oh, they're enjoying your content, you're not losing them at any time. And that will be all for this module. Thank you for watching. As always, if you have questions, you can always drop in the group for clarity. I hope you're able to enjoy this session, and I will see you in the next one.